That fall, after that particular job, I was able to get a job with Mr. Joe Brown at Belt Brown Company on Main Street. I remember very vividly my first day on that job, that first day, first customer, she came in the store and I politely asked if I could help her. She hardly looked at me, swept by me, and said if she'd wanted a baby to wait on her, she would have brought hers from home. Well, I was crushed, but I shook it off and spent the next couple of years with Mr. Brown, working a lot of afternoons, Friday night, and all day Saturdays. And I learned a lot about human nature on that job.
I spent a lot of time in there. I would often go in after school to see if you needed any help with anything. A lot of times it was just you needed somebody to fold papers or take sacks of, on Wednesday afternoon, everything was getting bundled up in these big mail sacks to be carried to the post office. I would make trips to the post office. There were a number of places around town that were points of sale for the paper. I would go fill those racks and collect the money from the previous weeks and do what I could to help, and I enjoyed it. I never ran the presses or did any of the really technical work in there, but I really did see how difficult it was and how tough it was to do that stuff, and a lot of it required heavy lifting, and the forms of everything was iron and steel and metal, and it was heavy, and just to carry the preset forms from the setup tables to the press took two men, to do that, and so I think growing up, not that I was afraid of hard work, but I saw that, I thought that was just back-breaking labor, and the time that it took, and the stress, the amount of stress that was in a typical week, I wanted to do something different.
I only went 2 years to Winthrop. At that particular time, there was a 2-year commerce course that we could take. It was a business course, and you could finish that in 2 years. It was actually an associate degree. But I went to work in Rock Hill at a telephone company in the business office. And I worked there about 4 years, and then I went to Charlotte and worked about a year at a Ford Motor Company. And then they were building this new office in Fort Mill Springs office, and it opened in 1952, I believe, I think it was in June, and I went to work in August. So that's when I started working. I worked there 37 years.
As being a young man, I ended up getting a job with Lucas G. Patterson, the mayor of Fort Mill, Red and White Supermarket. Worked for him for 7 years, from the time I was 11 years old until I was 18, until I graduated. And he played a very unique part in my life. I used to be his eyes. When he'd go to town meetings, he'd have me ride that old black Chevrolet with him, ride uptown, and then sit down. And I used to listen to the meetings, listen to the people talk about what they're planning to do, what the progress and their walk of life. And I think it was a great experience just to sit there and hear them talk. And he was the type of guy, he had his ways, but he was one of the most loving and caring person.
My mama said, you got to work in the mill to find out what it's like. And so when I got out of high school, a friend of mine was going there. He's now a preacher, but his dad mother worked in the mill, and I thought that was all right, and I thought that'd be neat, and I'd see him maybe. I hardly ever saw him, but because he's so big. But I was a sweeper, and I did that, and I learned a lot. In the sense, I learned a lot about mills, about weaving, doffing, and that kind of stuff. But I was just the lowest person on the totem pole when I was there. After working there, and it was hard work, but It was not that bad. I was young, so I didn't think it was that bad. But I can imagine for all the other people that were working there, they had a much tougher job than I did. And it was, you know, and the pay was, you know, it was just textile mills. You couldn't pay much because you had to sell your product, you know. But the Springs mills were better than any of the others around because the colonel took care of his folks.
Still, I had to do, the work. I would walk from around about 4 or 5 miles to come this way to go to the mill here. We called it the mill here then, to do washings. So I'd go to the mill here and do maybe 2 washings a day. And then when time was to farm, I had to go back and put out fertilizer. And at that time, what we used to put out fertilizer with was a hone. We would have a sack on our back with the fertilizer in it, and a hone for distributed. We had distributed at that time. Then when I get through with that, then I'd have to go home and cook for the children's. And then after that, then I had to get the children to bed. At the same time getting to bed. And the weekend I had to go to the spring and do the washing. And I washed practically all day on Saturday, washing for these kids. I did that until this now.
I worked for my granddaddy, and it was right interesting back in those days that he had a chicken coop out in front of the store. You didn't go in the store and buy dressed chickens like you do today. You went to a store and you bought a live hen, a live rooster, a live guinea, or a live turkey. And that was a mess trying to get and you sold them by the pound, put them on the scales and everything, tie the legs up, then you'd put them in a sack. But people would buy. That's the way you got your chickens way back in those days. They were live. And you'd buy them and you'd take them home and dress them and everything.
So what was your job for him, cleaning the chicken coop?
Well, carrying the chickens from the back chicken coops to the front where people could see them and pick them out one and everything. And just sort of clerking in the store, helping fill orders and stuff like that. And then when I got older, had a bicycle. I used to deliver groceries, had a basket up there and could deliver little groceries, to people right there in town. But made 50 cents a day. Paid 50 cents a day. $3 a week. Long time ago.